Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Poetry 1, course code 403, lecture 27. In the earlier lectures, we discussed the poetry of John Donne. He was a metaphysical poet. He was the most representative of the metaphysical poets. We discussed some of his love songs and holy sonnets. And he was the writer who was writing towards the end of the Elizabethan era. After that, just before John Donne, we discussed John Milton. He was a writer of the Puritan age, towards the end of Restoration period. So today we are going to start with the new topic, Alexander Pope. His era extends over the years from 1688 to 1744, and his poem The Rape of the Lock is included in this selection, in this course. His age is also known as, the literary career is also known as the Age of Pope. It has got other names also. We first let's have a look at the other names. Neoclassical age, it is known as Augustan age, it is known as the Age of Reason, it is known as the age pseudo-classical age, and the 18th century literature. All these names we will look into the details of the characteristics of the age, so that we understand better that why these names were attributed to this particular era in the history of English literature. Now, as far as this name Augustan age is concerned, it is known as Augustan age in England, but it takes its name from the era of Augustus. The age of Augustus, he was a Roman ruler, and his rule extended from 27 BC to 14 AD. And during those times, this era was famous for the classical writers, and the great writers like Horace, Virgil, and Ovid, they were writing during those times, and it is also known as the golden era of Latin literature. It had certain characteristics. These writers who were writing during the Augustan age, during the real Augustan age, in their writings, common sense and moderation was very prominent. They replaced reason for emotions, and they replaced elegance for brevity. So these were the characteristic features that were found in the writings of the great writers who belonged to the Augustan age, and these included Horace, Virgil, and Ovid. These were the prominent writers of the Augustan age. Now, since during the 18th century, or towards this end of 17th and 18th century, the writers imitated the works of these greater writers. So it takes its name from that era, and this is the reason it is called as neoclassical. It is known as pseudo-classical. It is also known as Augustan age in English literature. So the name is taken from that era of classical writings. The neoclassical age, or the Augustan age in England, is divided into two parts: the age of Dryden and the age of Pope. The age of this neoclassical age in England, in the history of English literature, is divided into two parts. The first half of it is known as the age of Dryden, and the second half is known as the age of Pope, because these were the two prominent writers of these two phases. So it is named after them. The age of Dryden ends by 1700 with Dryden's death. Then we have great prominent works by Alexander Pope, and Pope's age ends in 1744 with the death of Pope. So these are the two greater, we can say, divisions of the neoclassical age or the Augustan age in the history of English literature in England. As far as the background of the age is concerned, we have discussed earlier also when we talked about John Milton, because it will start from 1700 onwards, that because of the end of Renaissance, when Queen Elizabeth died, it will start from that point onwards, and half of it we have already discussed. But there are certain other features also that we did not talk about, because we had discussed only till the point where it is we talked till the point when Charles II came to the throne in England, and we discussed only till that point. But today, let's first have a recap of the political background starting from 1600 onwards in the 17th century and extending till 1700, because all these political and social incidents, they have the influence or they affect the lives of people who are living during those years. 17th century was a period of great change. We discussed earlier also that Queen Elizabeth died in 1603 and James I came to the throne. He was from Scotland. Queen was more concerned with the patriotic unity of the country, and when this new monarch ascended to the throne, people resented against the taxes, the alliances with the Spain, and these were the factors that ultimately resulted in the clash of the middle class with the monarchy. The king dissolved 3 parliaments, one in 1604, the other in 1614 and another one in 1621. So there was another important step. The government did not give civil rights to the ordinary men. So these were the reasons that people turned against him. Charles I came to the throne. Initially he was popular, but gradually, because of his wrong-headedness, because of his deceitfulness, people turned against him. Moreover, his marriage to a French princess proved to be a step ahead in aggravating the situation. Then Buckingham was appointed as the Lord Chancellor, who was most hated by James. So these all factors, they combined together, and the people turned against the king. He gave in the petition of civil rights ultimately in 1628, which said that there will not be any taxation without the prior permission from the Parliament. There will be no imprisonment without trial, and there will be no balloting of the soldiers from the citizenship. The king dissolved the Parliament, and for 11 years he ruled without any Parliament. The archbishops, ultimately the religious condition that continued in the country, the archbishops, they started punishing the Puritans. In this way, it gave rise to the Civil War. This Civil War was against the royalists, the people who were the defenders of the court, of the king. On the other hand, there were parliamentary forces, and with these parliamentary forces were Puritans also. The king was sentenced to death in 1649, and the country was declared a Commonwealth. Cromwell took some steps and succeeded in 1651. The parliament was dissolved and Cromwell became the Lord Protector of the country. He was famous for his strong foreign policy. There were favorable conditions by 1658 for the monarchy. Cromwell died in 1658. Monarchy was restored under Charles II as king. This long conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants, during all these years, the long conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants had culminated. The Test Act in 1653, Test Act in 1673 banned public offices, and Charles II died in 1658 and James became the king. His daughter Mary and William, they became the joint monarchs of England. They were Protestant. They were the first Protestant kings or the queen in England. Before that, all the leaders were Catholics, and the Protestants, they suffered a lot under the rule of these Catholic kings and Catholic monarchy. Since they were Protestants, so the Protestants, they had a sigh of relief now, because earlier even the bishops and the archbishops, they had turned against the Protestants and they used to punish them. Now there was the Bill of Rights. It was passed in 1689. Through this act of the Parliament, the Catholics were banned. Nobody belonging to the Catholic faith could become the king or the queen of the country. And to the extent that no king could marry a Catholic lady, And moreover, there were no steps that showed the cruelty towards these Catholics. The places of worship for the Catholics were separate. They were allowed to have their separate places of worship. They could have their own teachers and their own preachers. They were not banned. So they were free to perform their religious rituals the way they liked. They could have their own worship places of worship. They could have their own teachers. They could have their own preachers. But there was one restraint on the Catholics, that they could not get any government positions and universities. So nobody who wanted to study in the universities, if he belonged to the Catholic faith, he could not go to the university. Nobody could get a government job if he belonged to Catholic faith. As far as the social background is concerned, we discussed earlier also that the horse racing, the bear baiting, the sport of the cockpit and the theatrical performances were banned till 1660. So as a result, there were no notable works as far as the drama is concerned because of the close of the theatres. The Great Plague of London, it wiped out almost 1 million Londoners in 1660s. Even the greatest scientist, Newton, he escaped by moving away from London. So the only way to escape this sort of death in a very populated country was to leave the place for some time and to go into the desolate and lonely places. Now, another important development was the coffee houses. They were also known as intellectual huts. During those years, these coffee houses, they proved to be very successful. They were the informal gatherings of people, great people, thinkers, philosophers. They used to gather in these places and they used to discuss the subject matter. These coffee houses, they were the centers of commercial and literary activities. The knowledge was taken out of the libraries and it was transplanted into the coffee houses because there was no trend of going to the libraries. People used to go to these coffee houses. There they would discuss things, they would help each other, they would guide them. So through these discussions, the great writers, they would take inspiration for writing their literary works also. So one of the greatest social factor contributing to the development of literature during this era was the development of or the emergence of the coffee houses. As far as the characteristics of the age are concerned, the 18th century is characterized for order, clarity, decorum, stability, reason, wit, intelligence, and imagination was replaced by reason. So all these are the characteristics of the 18th century. Not only literature or not only the literary aspect, हर लिहाज से किसी भी आप एंगल से देख लें, उसमें वो ऑर्डर चाहते थे, वो उसमें क्लैरिटी चाहते थे, उनको डेकोरम चाहिए था, उनको जो आउटवर्ड अपीयरेंस थी, जो पॉम्प एंड शो था, उस पे बहुत ज्यादा एम्फेसिस था, स्टेबिलिटी थी, रीजन थी, इमोशंस के लिए कोई प्लेस नहीं थी. जिस तरह के अर्लियर हमने देखा कि ड्यूरिंग रेनेसां इमोशंस को एक खास मुकाम हासिल था जिसकी वजह से पोइट्री ने फ्लरिश किया. बट ड्यूरिंग दिस टाइम फॉर्म और ऑर्डर और स्टेबिलिटी को और क्लैरिटी को ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस दी गई और एक उसका डिक्शन पे और फोकस जो था वो स्टेबिलिटी और रीजनिंग पे था, इंटेलिजेंस पे था, विट पर था कि कितना आप एग्जिबिट कर सकते हो उस विट को जो रिगार्डलेस ऑफ योर फीलिंग्स की कोई या इमेजिनेशन को कोई स्पेस नहीं दी जा रही थी. There was a general appreciation of reason. It appreciated the control of emotions. Emotions को freely express नहीं किया जा सकता था. It appreciated the control over emotions. And then correctness in life and art, that was also important in every field. Not only literature, as we just discussed, that not only literature, हर life के हर aspect में करेक्टनेस वॉज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. उसकी फॉर्म को, उसमें डेकोरम को, उसमें करेक्टनेस को बहुत एक मुकाम हासिल था. सो दिस वॉज द ग्रेटेस्ट ऑफ द characteristic of this age. As far as the literary genres are concerned, there was poetry, but this poetry was not based on the emotions and the imagination of the poets. It was स्ट्रक्चर्ड, वेल प्लान्ड, उसको बहुत एक क्लियर और एक खास डिक्शन के तहत, एक खास मकसद के तहत उस पोइट्री को लिखा जाता था. सो दिस पोइट्री रिफ्लेक्टेड द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ द एज. जो जनरली जो एज की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स थी, हमें पोइट्री में भी वही कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स मिलती थी. ये वो पोइट्री नहीं थी कि जैसे वर्ड्सवर्थ ने पोइट्री को एक्सप्लेन किया था कि पोइट्री इज द स्पॉन्टेनियस ओवरफ्लो ऑफ पावरफुल फीलिंग्स, या पोइट्री इज द बेस्ट वर्ड्स पुट टुगेदर इन द बेस्ट ऑर्डर. सो वो पोइट्री नहीं थी. इस पोइट्री में सारी जो एज की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स थी वो बहुत नुमायां थी, वो बहुत प्रोमिनेंट थी. Secondly, there was the birth of novel. So for the first time novel was emerging, so this was an important milestone during the 18th century. Then there were essays. There was a trend of writing essays. Some of them, they were light humored, some of them were serious, some of them were scientific essays, and at times there were some satirical essays also. The heroic couplet was one of the most prominent form for writing literature. Then satire was very common, and the literature that was produced during this age was known as literature of manners. So these were the literary genres that were used during the 18th century. Still, the course that we are studying is Poetry 1, so we'll be concerned with the genre of poetry more specifically, but we talked about, so there were other forms as well that existed at the same time, but the poetry of this time is not poetry. Some critics, they believe that it is not poetry in the real sense. We'll discuss that later on. If we look at the notable writers of the age, there were certain notable writers of the age, as we talked about Dryden and Pope earlier also, that the Augustan age or the neoclassical age in the history of English literature in England is known as the age of Dryden and the age of Pope. It has been divided into two parts. So Dryden and Pope are the two most prominent figures of the neoclassical age. Then along with these two, there were others also. There was Jonathan Swift, Addison, and John Gay. So these are the notable writers of the age. These notable writers of the age, they took literary inspiration for writing their literary works from French models of writing. And they took nature as the model of discipline. They thought that nature brings discipline in your life. They based their works on logic and reason. उन्होंने अपने works में जब भी वो किसी चीज़ को compare करेंगे, जब भी कोई बात करेंगे, उसमें logic और reasoning के through बात करेंगे, logic और reasoning को ज़रूर mention करेंगे. Then the type of sentences, the type of language they used long sentences. So this is also one of the style, whether you use short sentences, you use simple or compound sentences. So the Augustan writers or the neoclassical writers, they used long sentences and they used difficult diction. Diction refers to the use of vocabulary items. So the type of vocabulary that these neoclassical writers used was difficult. कॉम्प्लेक्स वोकैबुलरी यूज करते थे. वो उनके ख्याल में पोइट्री जो है या कोई भी लिटरेरी जॉनरा जो है वो एक बहुत एलिवेटेड उसका स्टेटस है और उस स्टेटस के मुताबिक उसको एक मुकाम देना चाहिए और उसके मुताबिक उसको लिखना चाहिए. ये नहीं कि जो भी वर्ड आपके जहन में आ रहा है, जो भी आपकी, यही वजह थी कि इमोशंस और इमेजिनेशन का इसमें कोई दखल नहीं था. सो दिस वाज द रीजन दे वर यूजिंग डिफिकल्ट डिक्शन जो कि थॉट वेल प्लान्ड हो, बहुत अच्छे तरीके से उन्होंने उसको प्लान किया हो, सोचा हो कि अच्छा ये नहीं, ये वाला वर्ड ज्यादा सूट हो. सो दिस वाज नॉट समथिंग डायरेक्टली कमिंग फ्रॉम द हार्ट. दिस वाज नॉट समथिंग रिप्रेजेंटिंग द इमोशंस ऑफ पीपल और रिप्रेजेंटिंग द स्पॉन्टेनियस इमेजिनेशन. तो इसमें इमेजिनेशन, इमोशंस या फीलिंग्स का कोई अमल दखल नहीं था. यहाँ पर जो है वो वेल थॉट, स्ट्रक्चर्ड और प्लान्ड लैंग्वेज यूज होती थी. As far as the literary models are concerned, Latin and Greek writers were used as the model. Among these, as we discussed earlier also, that the writers of the Augustan era, the real Augustan era, they were followed. Among these we had Ovid, Horace and Virgil. These are the three most prominent writers who were imitated. And the writers of the neoclassical age imitated the classical works. Those classical works, they consisted of epics. So there was a revival of epics. They wrote these Latin writers, they had wrote pastorals, satires and Pindaric ode. So all these genres and all these forms of poetry were revived during the neoclassical age, because the Latin writers had written, Latin writers like Ovid, Horace and Virgil, they had written in these forms. They has utilized these forms. As far as the principles of literary works are concerned, they were propounded by two of the greatest works in this age. One was with the publication of Dryden's An Essay of Dramatic Poesy. It was published in 1668, and in this he discussed the principles that should be followed for writing the it discussed the principles of writing any prose work. Then Pope's Essay on Criticism, it was published in 1711. It also discussed the doctrine of literary works. Since we are going to analyze The Rape of the Lock. It is written by Alexander Pope. So first let's have a look at the brief biography of Alexander Pope. We have seen the background of the age in which he was living. During those times, the Catholics, first they were the ones who were the tyrants and the cruel, because the Catholic government was in power, and even the clergymen who were Catholics, they had a very cruel attitude towards the Protestants. But later on, with the accession of Mary and her husband William, since they were Protestants, so the misery, the tyranny of these Catholics, they came to an end, and the Catholics were free to have their places of worship, their teachers, they were free to have their preachers, but no king or queen of England could belong to the Catholic faith. Moreover, no king could marry a Catholic lady. So under such circumstances, Alexander Pope was living. Let's look at the brief biography of the poet. He was born in London in 1688. He belonged to a middle class family. He was the son of Alexander Pope and Edith, and it was a Roman Catholic family. Now this is something very important. We just discussed the age and we talked about the Catholics and the Protestants, that the long tyranny of the Catholics had ended, and Catholics had all the favors of the king and the court, and because it was their government. But later on, by the time probably 1688, there were Protestants who were in power. So by the time Pope was able to go to the university or to get some job, there was Protestant government, and he belonged to the Catholic family, to the Roman Catholic family. And his mother's family, it was divided along the Catholic and the Protestant lines. His father was a linen trader, he was a linen merchant. So this was the time of repressive legislations and prejudices. The Protestants were prejudiced against the Catholics because of the cruel and the tyrannical attitude of the Catholic kings and queens. So as a result of that act of the parliament, the Catholics were not allowed to go to the universities, and there were no public employments, there were no governmental employments available for the Catholics. They were not allowed to do so. So as a result of this, Pope had uneven education because he belonged to a Roman Catholic family. So this was his misfortune, that he belonged to a Roman Catholic family. So during the very years when he was born, there was a reform, there was a revolution. Through that, there was a taking over of the Protestant government, and the long tyranny of the Catholic kings had ended. This proved to be very unfortunate for the king. He had uneven education because he was a Catholic. He was not allowed to go to any of the schools or the universities. He attended some of the Catholic schools, but his educational career was often interrupted, and these Catholics, they could not hold property under 20 miles of the vicinity of London. So his educational career was often interrupted. Most of the times he spent reading books at his father's library that he had established for his son. He was 12 years old when the family moved to Benfield in Windsor Forest. During the same years, he developed tuberculosis of bones through the infected milk, and this was probably known as the Pott's disease. Because of this disease, he became invalid. He became dwarfish for all his life. He was only 4.6 feet tall. He was his height was 4 feet and 6 inches. So he had a short height, and because of this illness, because of this, he could not travel on the bumpy roads of London of those times, because it was not the London as it is developed today. He also suffered from, so this was not the only disease, the Pott's disease was not the only disease that he suffered from. He also suffered from asthma and headaches, and he had a humpback also, and because of this humpback, he was often made the target in the literary battles, and he was known as the hunchbacked toad. So when you have your rivals in a circle, they often call you a different name. So he was also in the literary battles, he was targeted as hunchbacked toad. He remained a bachelor all his life. Because of his religious faith, he could not go to any good educational institutions. So to a large extent, he was a self-educated man. He learned several languages. His aunt taught him to read and write. So the first years of his education, to be able to read and write, that was done by his aunt at home. He learned Latin and Greek from some local priest. Then later he learned French and Italian languages. He read the works of great writers. So he was a keen reader also. He read the works of great writers including Homer, Virgil, Chaucer. So he read the great works of all these writers. He read the works of even Shakespeare, Spenser and Milton. He imitated the works. So he did not only read the works of these greater writers, he even copied, he started imitating these works. He was resolute to make himself a literary figure. So the purpose was not only to read. He later on started copying those works. He started imitating those works in his own writings, and he was resolute. He was determined to make himself the literary figure of the time. He made several visits to London, because in those days it was not the Catholics were not allowed to come to London or to live there or to attend any of the universities. So this was something restricting him from staying away from London. So he started making some of friendships there. He made many friendship with many learned men in London. Among these we have William Walsh, Congreve, Wycherley, Garth, the first Earl of Oxford, and Jonathan Swift. So he made friendship with many learned men. Since he was interested in the writings of the great writers, so he read them, he imitated their works, he made friendship with the learned, with the men of letters. He entered that circle of the scholars of the time. Finally, he moved to London, and after moving to London, he published his major literary works that included an essay on criticism. It is a discussion based on the neoclassical doctrines. There is a line from an essay on criticism: "Whoever thinks a faultless piece to see, thinks what never was, nor is, nor ever shall be." So he has stated in an essay on criticism, he has stated the impossibility of finding the perfect thing. He says that whosoever thinks that he wants to see a faultless piece, something that is unsurpassable, something that is void of any fault in it, he says that there never was any such piece that did not have any fault in it. There is not any piece existing at present, and it will not even be produced even in future that cannot have any fault in it. So he says that he mentions the impossibility of producing something faultless, something superb, something extraordinary. He wrote the Rape of the Lock in 1712. This was the first time that Rape of the Lock was written. It was an elegant satire, and it was revised again and published in 1714, because in 1712 it was published in 2 cantos only. The work was expanded later on, and in 1714 it was published in 5 cantos. He also helped Swift in writing Gulliver's Travel, as we discussed earlier also, that during those years there was a trend of these learned men, they gathered in the coffee houses. So they helped each other in doing different works, in giving ideas to each other. So Alexander Pope helped Jonathan Swift writing Gulliver's Travel, which is a satirical work. He published his essay on man in 1733 or 34. In this essay on man, he examined human condition, and in that he rebelled against the type of cosmic background which has been taken up by Milton in his Paradise Lost. So he talks about the human conditions that are discussed in Miltonic cosmic background. He goes against those traditions, he goes against those backgrounds. Essay on Man is evocative, it is dramatic in nature, it is exciting and concrete. Pope was popular for his satirical works because they represented his wit. Those satirical works, they were ingenious, they were witty, and finally he translated Iliad and Odyssey. So this proved to be a great support, a great financial support for him, because the translation of Iliad and Odyssey was a success and it became very popular and it earned him lots of money. So this was his greatest achievement. The translation of Iliad and Odyssey was the greatest achievement of Alexander Pope, and it supported him financially. Because of this financial support that he has gained from the translation of Iliad and Odyssey, he moved to Twickenham, and the landscape of the place was so inspiring and beautiful that it inspired him to study landscape gardening. After having been moved to Twickenham, we do not find any notable literary works by Pope. He was, most of the times he was busy in landscape gardening and all those things. He just revised and edited his earlier works that he had produced before that. His health finally declined and he died at the age of 56 in 1744. So with this we see the end of the age of Pope. The Rape of the Lock is one of his greatest work. It was published first in 1712. It was for the first time when it was published, it contained 2 cantos only. It is an elegant satire. It is based on it represents the hysterical battles between the sexes. It represents the follies of the young of that times. It consisted of 2 cantos only when it was published for the first time. It was expanded and republished in 1714, and this second edition, it consisted of 5 cantos. So the work was expanded, it was elaborated, and it was given the form of 5 cantos later on. It is based on a quarrel between 2 families. Pope knew both these families. Now, the Rape of the Lock is the basis of this story is some real life incident, and that is a quarrel, that is a fight or a battle between 2 families. 2 खानदानों के दरमियान जो असल में जो वाकया हुआ था, उस वाकये के ऊपर जो है पोप ने ये स्टोरी लिखी है, and he himself was not inclined to write this story. Carlyle, who was Pope's friend, he suggested that there should be a light, humorous poem written on this occasion, so that people try to bring a reform in the society, so that such trivial things should be avoided. Basically, this story discusses the follies of the elite class के high society में 18th century में, since they were considered with the form and order and stability and the decorum. So the manners were very important, and this is the reason that we discussed earlier also, that the literature that was produced in this age, in this era, that was known as the literature of manners. Now why literature of manners? Because those manners, they actually were prevalent in this society. वो society में लोग उस तरह से कर रहे थे, तो because literature is a mirror image of the society. जो social practices society में prevalent हैं, उन्हीं को literature में भी depict किया जाता है. So it was not only an imitation of the age of Augustus. In this particular story, in The Rape of the Lock, the basis or the content matter of the story is taken from the real life, and it is based on the issue that took place between two families, and Pope knew both these families, and it revolves around the incident. And the basic incident was that Lord Petre, he cut off lock of Miss Arabella Fermor's hair. So that incident basically resulted in the dispute, in the quarrel between the two families. So हकीकत में ये quarrel जो है हुआ था, Lord Petre, he was so ambitious, he was so when Miss Arabella Fermor, she resisted his advances, ultimately he stole one of the lock of her hair, and it ultimately ended in the dispute, in the battle between the two families. बहुत नाराजगियां शुरू हो गई दोनों खानदानों के दरमियान. सो ये जो इतना ट्रिवियल सा मैटर था, उसको इस कदर हवा दी गई कि जॉन काराइल, हु वाज पोप्स फ्रेंड, के पोप का जो फ्रेंड है काराइल, उसने ये सजेस्ट किया कि ये इतनी पेटी सी बात थी, इतनी ट्रिवियल कॉमन प्लेस सी बात थी, इसको इतना ज्यादा बढ़ाया गया कि दोनों खानदानों के दरमियान जो है वो डिस्प्यूट्स पैदा हो गए, दोनों खानदानों के दरमियान नाराजगियां बढ़ गई. So he suggested Pope to write a poem. उसने कहा कि एक लाइट ह्यूमर्ड पोएम होनी चाहिए, ताकि सोसाइटी की ये जो फॉलीज हैं, ये जो इनके एटीट्यूड्स हैं, ये जो इनके मैनरिज्म्स हैं, उसको रिफ्लेक्ट किया जाए, उसको रिफॉर्म करने की कोशिश की जाए. So it is based on the quarrel between the two families, and basically the people involved in this were Lord Petre and Miss Arabella Fermor, and it is written on John Carlyle's suggestion. He suggested Pope to write a poem on this trivial incident, to point out the follies of the aristocratic families, to point out the follies of the elite class, के high society में लोग किस तरह की चीज़ों को, even in the poem when we will have the scenes described, we will see that किस तरह के manners जो है उस वक्त elite class को क्या preferences थी, किस तरह के manners follow किए जाते थे. We will come to know that when we will analyze the story. The story of the poem is that a young lady, Belinda, she wakes up, then there is a huge description of, there is elaborate description of her beauty aids. She plays cards. Now, when the poem opens, right at the beginning, the poet mentions the theme, the subject matter of the poem, then he invokes the muse, and he says that, not only muse, he says that Carlyle, he will inspire me, he will approve my, the plan of my poem, because it was Carlyle who suggested him this, who gave him this idea to write a poem on this incident. Then we see that Belinda wakes up. Then there is inclusion of spirits also throughout the poem. We find different spirits who are on the guard of the beautiful women in the world. Description of her beauty aids. So then after that we come to know about her dressing table, her priorities. When she wakes up, the first thing she does is to read the love letters. She is interested in that, and after that she offers the prayer bareheaded, and she offers the prayer to the goddess of beauty and makeup. She plays cards, and she flirts, and she drinks coffee, and finally the last incident, she lost a lock of her hair, and that lock of hair was stolen by a devoted young man. He was always impressed by the young lady, by Belinda, so he stole a lock of her hair. So in The Rape of the Lock, there is a trivial incident. ट्रिवियल किसी ऐसी चीज को कहते हैं जो कि अनइम्पॉर्टेंट हो, कॉमन प्लेस हो, जो हर रोज होती हो. तो एक बहुत ही कॉमन सा इंसिडेंट है जो कि जिसकी कोई सिग्निफिकेंस नहीं है, आम सा इंसिडेंट है. the poet has given it a mock heroic treatment. Now we are familiar with heroic treatment, or we know that what is epic. This poem is considered to be a mock epic. Now when we say mock heroic, heroic qualities are those जहाँ पे कि एक हीरो है जो कि जिसकी national या universal significance है, that we have seen in earlier poems also. We have discussed and analyzed the Fairy Queen and Paradise Lost, and in these we have seen that the hero is somebody who is an exceptionally able man who is larger than life, and there are certain other characteristics also that make it that make the battle or that make the journey holy, and there is a purpose also. So the poet has given it a mock heroic treatment, showing the follies of the elite class के उस जमाने में जो elite class के जो preferences हैं वो क्या हैं, वो किस तरह से उठते हैं, उनके उठने के क्या टाइम है. Now when we will analyze the text of the poem, we will see that Belinda wakes up at 12. She wakes up at noon. So this is not the time to get up in the morning, or rather at noon it won't be morning. So he gives a mock heroic treatment in order to highlight the triviality of the matter, उसकी commonplaceness को, उसके उस ज़माने में जो elite class है उसकी कंडीशन दिखाने के लिए उसको एक मॉक हेरोइक ट्रीटमेंट दिया है. उसमें हमें हर तरह की डिस्क्रिप्शन मिलती है कि उसके जो परफ्यूम्स हैं या जो उसकी ब्यूटी जो कॉस्मेटिक्स हैं, दे आर ऑल इम्पोर्टेड. इट इज़ अ सटायर ऑन द कंटेम्प्रेरी सोसाइटी. सटायर उस वक्त यूज़ की जाती है जब बहुत सारी वीकनेसेस हों सोसाइटी में, बहुत सारे ऐसे काम किए जा रहे हों जो कि उस तरीके से नहीं होने चाहिए थे. जिस तरह से हमने प्रोलॉग टू द कैंटरबरी टेल्स में देखा था कि प्रोलॉग टू द कैंटरबरी टेल्स में जो चर्च के कैरेक्टर्स थे, प्रायरस थी, उसके अलावा जैसा कि प्रोलॉग टू द कैंटरबरी टेल्स में मॉन्क, प्रायरस, फ्रायर, these people were not at all religious. So in a satirical manner, or they are not exactly satire, because in satire you tend to be harsh, you tend to be a little bitter also. In a humorous manner, the poet pointed out the follies of those people. So in Rape of the Lock we find it is a satirical piece of work on the contemporary society. 18th century में elite class के जो हालात थे, वो जो भी कुछ कर रहे थे, तो हमें उसकी true picture जो है दिखाने की कोशिश की गई है through satirical work. The poet underlines, or we can say the poet highlights those issues of the 18th century society. The high society obsessions and concerns, कि वो लोग किस चीज़ से कंसर्न थे उस वक्त. उनके लिए वो किस टाइम पे सो के उठते थे. जैसा कि बेलिंडा जो है पोएम में वो सोकर 12 बजे उठती है, एंड देन हर कॉस्मेटिक्स, उसके बाद वो प्रेयर अगर ऑफर भी करती है, इट इज नॉट टू दी गॉड, इट इज टू दी गॉड ऑफ ब्यूटी एंड मेकअप. उसको ऑफर प्रेयर कर रही है विद द वाइट रॉब्स एंड ऑल दैट, एंड विद हर हेड नेकेड. Moreover, we find that the moment she gets up, she sees the letters, that are there any letters for her to read instead of offering prayer. So finally, whenever there is satire, it usually recommends a reform, it recommends a reform, that there should be certain steps should be taken in the society to get rid of this situation, or to get rid of the follies that people are involved in. Let's have a look at the review of lecture 27. We discussed the background of the neoclassical age. The 17th century was a period of great changes. We saw that different monarchs came there after the death of Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth died in 1603. After that, we had James I, then Charles I, Charles II. The country was declared as Commonwealth later on. So we had, with all these, there was a Catholic government in the country, in England, and there were clashes of the middle class with the monarchy, and the parliament was also with the middle class. So there was civil war also. So all these political factors combined together were responsible for certain political situation that took place towards the end of the 17th century. Towards the end of the 17th century, it brought an end to the Catholic government. The Catholic king died, and the king's daughter and husband. Both of them, they came to the throne, and they were known as the joint monarchs of the country of England. With this, the tyranny and the long dispute between the middle class and the Roman Catholic government, it came to an end. So now, from this point onwards, the country, even before this, the country was divided into two groups, the Protestants and the Catholics. But through an act of the parliament, the Catholics were banned. The Catholics could not become the king or the queen of the country. They could not enter good educational institutions. They could not go to the universities. They could not get any governmental position. They could not get any job of the government. So these were the things that created problems for the Catholics. Meanwhile, we see that during these years, Alexander Pope, about whom we are going to study, he was born. So he was born in a Roman Catholic family. It proved to be a misfortune for him that he was born in a Roman Catholic family. If we have a look at the characteristics of the age, this was also known as the age of reason, the age of, it was known as neoclassical age, it was known as the Augustan age because of a number of factors. It was known as the Augustan age because the writers tried to follow the models of the age of Augustine. In those, we have Ovid, Horace and Virgil. Those Latin writers were copied. Their themes, the subject matters, the type of poetry that they wrote were copied, were imitated by the English writers during this era. That is why it is known as the Augustan age in England, in the history of English literature in England. Moreover, it was known as neoclassical age because the writers copied, they imitated the works of classical writers. It was known as the age of reason because during this era, the writers, they based their works on reason rather than on emotion. So there was a shift because during the Renaissance, there was the expression of emotions and feelings. There was the expression of imagination. Now that has shifted. It was a revolt. This 17th and 18th century, it was a revolt against that free expression of the imagination. During the 17th and 18th century, the attention was given to form, order, stability, to wit, to intellect. So imagination, emotions, feelings, they did not get any place in the lives of people in the 18th century. As far as the literary genres are concerned, poetry was also written, but the poetry produced during this time was different from the poetry produced in any other era of English literature because the writers were concerned more with the form and with the subject matter of the poetry. They were not concerned with the emotions and feelings. The type of vocabulary they used was complex. So the language used was complex. They used longer sentences. Attention was focused on form as compared to the subject matter, as compared to the content matter. Dryden and Pope were the most notable writers of this era. There were others also that included Gay and Jonathan Swift. But as far as Dryden and Pope are concerned, they are most notable because of these two prominent writers. The Augustan age of English literature is also divided into two phases, the age of Dryden and the age of Pope. The age of Dryden ended in 1700 with the death of Dryden, and the age of Pope ended in 1744 with the death of Pope. As far as the biography of Alexander Pope is concerned, we discussed that since he belonged to a Roman Catholic family, he was born in 1688 at the time when the Catholics were banned. No Catholic could become the king or queen, and they were banned to enter the universities. They could not get any public position, any governmental job. So this was the time that was hard for the Catholics. Because of all these factors, all these political and social factors, Pope could not attend any of the good schools. He did go to some Catholic schools, but he was, to a large extent, he was a self-educated man. He learned to read and write from his aunt, and he learned many languages. and among these he learnt Latin and Greek and French and Italian languages, and he was a great admirer of those classical writers of Latin and Greek languages. He read the great masters of the great classical writers. He tried to imitate their works in his writings. Being a Catholic, he was not allowed to go, initially he was not allowed to go to London, probably 20 miles in the vicinity of London, but later on he managed to do so, and he made several visits to London, and he made a number of friendships there with notable men of letters in London. And it was after moving to London that he published his literary works. He published his Essay on Man in 1711, and The Rape of the Lock was published in 1712. The Rape of the Lock was republished in 1714 by expanding it into 5 cantos. The Rape of the Lock is based on a trivial incident that originally took place between 2 families whom Alexander Pope knew. Lord Petre cut off lock of Miss Arabella Farmer's hair. So this was basically the incident. Since they belong to the elite class, इस इशू का, इस छोटी सी बात का इस कदर बतंगड़ बनाया गया कि इस पर दोनों खानदानों के दरमियान बहुत देर तक जो है वो नाराजगियां चलती रही. देन काराइल, हु वाज जॉन अलेक्जेंडर पोप्स फ्रेंड, पोप का फ्रेंड काराइल जो है, ही सजेस्टेड कि इस इंसिडेंट पे एक ह्यूमरस पोइम लिखनी चाहिए. सो ऑन हिज सजेशन पोप undertook this task and he started writing the poem. So this was the origin of the poem, and in the poem, in The Rape of the Lock, we find Belinda representing Miss Arabella Farmer, and Lord Petre is represented by Baron. As far as the theme and subject matter of the poem is concerned, it discusses a very trivial matter that took place between the 2 families, and basically it suggests a revolt. The poet has given it a mock heroic treatment. It is written in the form of a mock epic. He has included all the elements. The real incident is taken from the real life, but along with that, in order to give it a mock heroic treatment, in order to give it a mock epic treatment, he has included a number of elements also in order to bring a revolution, in order to bring a reform in the society, because this piece of writing, this poem, serves as a satire on the attitudes of the elite class of the 18th century society. So this was all about the background of the neoclassical age, the age of Pope. We talked about the biography of Alexander Pope. We discussed the Rape of the Lock, the plan of the Rape of the Lock, and in the next lecture we shall start with the analysis of the poem The Rape of the Lock. Allah Hafiz.